the White House recently had a summit on the state of women. I think it was called the State of Women Conference. Our next guest attended that conference and made some very good points via social media, among other things, about that conference. She is Jenya Cassidy. Jenya directs the California Work and Family Coalition, which is a project of Next Generation. It's an alliance of working parents, caregivers, advocates, and union members organizing to expand and protect every Californian's right to put their family first. Jenna, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So you were invited to this State of Women conference, which was put on by the White House, pretty much just what it sounds like from the name?
Yes. Yeah, I was one of 5,000 women and a few men that were there.
So, and you had some concerns about it that you expressed. We found them on Twitter. One of them was that it sounded like you felt there was too much of an entrepreneurial or business emphasis. Is that correct?
Yeah. A lot of the focus was on women, on some of the issues that we work on in the California Work and Family Coalition. We're part of a national network of organizations that are fairly grassroots, that work around paid sick days, paid leave, and it's a very worker, parent, and caregiver-focused movement. But a lot of the celebration of the wins on those issues were a little bit more focused on a business doing the right thing, for example.
So was your concern, I mean, I think this is really interesting, and especially when it comes to issue like benefits, paid leave, and so on, and wages, because it points to a philosophical difference as to whether workers win these things or whether businesses offer these things out of the generosity of their hearts or because they are good corporate citizens. And I have a strong theory of change opinion about that myself, but it sounds like the emphasis here was on the kindness of strangers, to use Tennessee Williams' words, instead of the organization and power of workers. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, and I think to some extent, I think maybe the administration it's just more what even the Obama administration is a little bit about. Also, there are a lot of things that he personally couldn't push because of Congress. So maybe I was thinking about it a lot. Maybe that's saying, well, business can do this on their own. But I also just think it's maybe a lot the way our culture, the way we tend to think. Like if there's a newspaper story in a major paper about a win, you often really won't see the organizing behind the win. You'll see maybe the big congressional person or whoever else was behind it. Usually it'll be a local level here right now. And you'll see maybe a person who will benefit from that win being quoted, but you won't really see a lot of the actual work. And even that person who is quoted may not just be a mom, they may be an activist who really helped make this happen. And it's just people like to highlight the businesses and the, that sort of aspect. It's a little bit frustrating.
Yeah, no, I think you make a fantastic point. We're talking with activist Jenya Cassidy about the State of Women Summit at the White House and what it might tell us about our cultural view of these things. And of course, culture and politics shape one another. Communication and politics shape one another. And the sort of seeming invisibility of workers in this and organizers in this whole process, to me, it almost suggests, and forgive me for this because I tend to get in trouble for being too much of a lefty and not much of a party politician, but it almost speaks to me as if the difference between the Democrats and Republicans on workers' issues is that one wants businesses to be nicer than the other, but that right now we don't emphasize in our political debate, where's labor's voice in all of this? We have all these conferences where quote-unquote ordinary people show up and then business leaders show up, but where is the voice of organized labor or organized mothers or organized women or organized families, citizens acting in concert with one another? Do you think that's a fair criticism or over the top?
Yeah, definitely. California was the first state to pass paid family leave, and that was a huge victory. Although we still have in our coalition a lot of work to do on making leave really work for more families. So a lot of our political work right now is how are we changing the law to make it sure that it works for low-income workers, for new immigrant workers. A large part of the population in California are new immigrants, both documented and undocumented. And we also talk about, what is the right to take leave. In our state, it's different. Having the right to actually take this leave without being fired and having the money are two different laws. So we're, still working on that. We actually had a big vote in the assembly where one of our bills was killed that would have extended the right to more people to take leave. But when I went to the White House event, there was a carve-out group called Lead on Leave. And when I went in, it was mostly businesses and one state representative and then one large national group represented there. And it was not any of the, what I recognize as this movement, although actually the state representative said great things, and she is part of a grassroots movement and definitely represents her state really well. But one of the main speakers was in our network, and she is Molly Moons. I think she runs an ice cream business, and she has really great things to say as a business. One of the things that she says is, I wouldn't go into business if I couldn't run a business to my own values. We definitely need more of that everywhere, where people really have strong values and they don't do something that's against those values of, supporting workers. So one of her values is paid leave, paid sick days is another, and healthcare. And she wouldn't have gone into business without that. And that was definitely a very inspiring message, and not something that we don't want to hear. It's just that the businesses aren't necessarily part of the movement that's pushing this for everybody. Often we have people come to our state capitol in California saying, this is a great thing, but we want the right to either say yes or no.
Right. I mean, I think, I think you're exactly right, Jenya. I mean, I think that, first of all, if you look at the history of labor in the United States, I don't think any major victory has been won, whether it's minimum wage, whether it's 40-hour work week, which is being eroded, as you know, around us, or any of the other big advances based on the generosity of individual business people. And I think it's also fair to say about somebody that has good values like Molly, that she should not be put at a disadvantage compared to other businesses that may be less altruistic. So this has got to be an organized activity. And I'm also interested in terms of your organization, the California Work and Family Coalition, and what you're working on. It sounds like one of the main issues is that it's one thing not to be fired for taking leave when you need it, but if paid leave isn't offered, for a lot of people, it's like they don't have the right at all. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Martin Luther King saying it's not enough to get the right to eat at a lunch counter if you don't have the money for a hamburger at the lunch counter. This should not be a privilege restricted to some. It's my personal feeling. And are you guys working on that as well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's 6 weeks of paid leave in California. Most workers pay into it. It's very different what we're working on here, because we definitely in the long run don't think that 6 weeks is the magic number. 12 weeks might not even be in the long run. We have countries all over the world that people can take a lot more time off if they really need it for a family member. They can take a lot more time off to bond with a new baby. But what we're working on here actually right now is that in California, you could be a worker that pays into paid leave. That's an insurance, a social insurance that you can use when you need it. But if you don't work for a large enough employer, you could actually be terminated for using your leave. So because you're not covered by FMLA or any of the our state job protection laws. Mm-hmm. So we're actually working right now on expanding the job protection so more people can benefit from paid family leave.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And I'd also ask you, I'm just curious, Jenya Cassidy, what do you think of Senator Gillibrand's Family Leave Act?
I mean, I like it. It probably could be one of the things coming from California is that it could be more protective on the job protection piece. What I do like about it is that it's a social insurance, and I think if we're looking at what we want to do nationally, I do think that's the way to go. that we really need something that really belongs to the workers. A lot of people say, oh, well, then the employers aren't paying into it. But I think the employers could pay into it as well. But California's paid leave, for example, we have a whole group that meets with the EDD regularly. There's a lot of sense of ownership of it. This is our money. It can't really just be taken away. It's a very strong basis. So in that way, I really do like it.
Well, you just outlined, to my mind, one of the great strengths of a social insurance program like this is that people are able to say it's our money, we paid into it, and we need to have some say in how it's handled. And I have to say, I'm being extra rough on the Democrats this time around, but I was a little disappointed that Hillary Clinton doesn't support Senator Gillibrand's act because she says she doesn't want to tax people under $250,000 in income, which excludes all forms of social insurance. Theoretically, it would include Social Security if we weren't already there. So I'm a big supporter of the social insurance model. Was there much talk of social insurance at the State of Women Summit?
No, I don't hear those words in those types of large gatherings, but I do think for Family Values at Work, which is the national network that I'm part of, they are doing work. They're supporting local work on paid sick days and paid family leave. That is a big term that we use often in a very positive way. And I'm also with you. I just think that's the way to go, even ultimately, hopefully for healthcare. I almost think we shouldn't call it a tax, although maybe that's a euphemism. It's just not the way I look at it. I look at it as so different than just a tax because it's just something that the whole society benefits from, like having public education, et cetera. So many things like that, we underestimate what a great boon it would be to everybody to have access to these things.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we tend to dismiss the idea of the public good being really good. People will hear, be told about, let's say, health insurance for everyone, or health coverage for everyone is better termed, insurances. But and they'll hear, oh, your taxes are going to go up $1,000. They don't hear your premiums of $3,000 will go away. So we have a tendency to use tax as a kind of scare word. Now, speaking of the summit, by the way, so Warren Buffett was there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was interesting to me at the Women's Summit.
Right.
He had quite a big section where he was talking about some of his own policies and the way he's been to workers and things like that.
Well, yeah, I wonder about that myself, seeing as he's not a woman and not a specialist in this subject. But, one of the things you tweeted out about this, and I thought it was interesting, was you said businesses are not the ones leading on paid leave. They are being pushed from behind by activists. Was there a lot of sort of congratulating of businesses who were offering paid leave?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a very big thing in this whole kind of larger movement. I wouldn't say it's part of the grassroots piece necessarily, but often when we're doing anything, people ask for businesses. And even though we can find businesses in California that are, maybe partly because this is in the water, people are really talking about paid leave as a benefit, as a good thing to do, we can point to a lot of businesses who do this, but then that's not, their job isn't being an activist making it happen. They're sort of a good example. And I feel like it sends an interesting message of saying that this is the way it's going to get done. Businesses will be influenced to have this happen, but then that's not equity. What we really want is equity so that every worker, even if they happen to work for not a nice business, has this basic right and knows that they have this right.
Absolutely. And when it comes to something like paid leave, you also have a bigger pool of people contributing. And so I take it there were business people there, but maybe not as many labor people?
Yes, and there were some labor people because some of the large unions, UFCW, SEIU, are very engaged at the national level, been very engaged with the Obama administration. I think both unions at the national level have come out in support of Clinton. I feel like they have a stake in whatever this administration and the next administration does. They did feature workers, and that was one of the really good things, is hearing from these workers who are part of this. So there is that kind of visibility of labor, but I even think with these unions, there is a growing grassroots movement that's both supported by and even to some extent on the outside of these major unions. And I'm a union person, so I think they're great. I just think that right now there needs to be a push. So many workers are not in unions. I'm really glad to see that a lot of those workers are organizing. A lot of our coalition are worker groups that are not necessarily unions, but they represent a certain sector.
And in a way, it's a little analogous to the Fight for 15, where a lot of union and non-union workers became active in this, and then the unions backed it and helped it expand. So it's interesting. Well, Jenya Cassidy, I really thank you for coming on the program, and we're very interested in your work, your grassroots work at the California Work and Family Coalition. So once again, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.